Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm honored to be here with Bill Lacey, the general manager of the sanctuary at Kiowa Island Golf Resort in Kiowa, South Carolina. Um, Welcome, Bill, a past president of Southern Innkeepers and currently a vice president of South Carolina on the board here for Southern Innkeepers. So we're happy to have you today, and everyone's excited to hear some of your experiences and knowledge as we move forward. So starting off, I just want to give you an opportunity to kind of talk about your property a little bit and your current hospitality role and what makes the sanctuary so special.
Brent, thank you very much. Good to see you again. The sanctuary, from my perspective, is an amazing property all by itself. We are 255 rooms. We are a five-star, five-diamond property. We sit right on Kiowa Island with 10 miles of pristine beach, and we have 5 golf courses on the island, most notably the Ocean Course, which has hosted the PGA twice. 45 different tours and activities that we run through Night Heron Park and Mingo Point. We have 22 tennis courts and a tennis learning center and a golf learning center. And then we literally, have something for everybody. If it's the kids programs or it's the nature programs, or if you just want to enjoy some spa and good music and good restful time, then we often see people coming back over and over again, just because they haven't got to experience it all. And so we couple all of that by sitting in a very short distance through Charleston, which is the #1 destination by Condé Nast, that just people love coming to visit and enjoying the Low Country. So we're very blessed with a lot of very positives about the sanctuary, and very proud to be here and very proud of the team that I'm honored to represent.
Good. It is such a special spot, and like you said, not only a resort there, but everything else you guys offer within the Low Country and the proximity to Charleston. And I know a lot of people have been lucky to visit you guys, and you guys continue to set such a high mark in what you do.
Thank you.
So I know that in doing this, your career did not start as general manager of the sanctuary, and I think everyone would be very eager to hear how you progressed to this role and some of the hospitality experiences and knowledge that you've had in your past positions and things to bring you to where you are today. So if you want to talk about those a little bit, I think everybody would like to hear that.
Sure. I think if you had told me back in 1988 that I would be a general manager of a five-star, five-diamond hotel at some point in my career, I probably would have laughed at you. But I fell into hospitality, and was looking for something else, and ended up working in a local restaurant in England. I grew up in England, and my degree was in business and finance, and took a job in a 90-bedroom hotel where I lived, which is right on the north of England on the Scottish border, and got to work in a great restaurant, 90-bedroom hotel, and got to learn about wine, got to learn about food, and was working with a great group of people. Had a lot of fun, probably too much fun. And I think that's really what attracted me to the business, is that everyone seemed to be having a great time. And, you work together, you socialize together, and it was a very positive thing. And I was lucky enough to be on an apprenticeship program. So next thing you know, I'm in the kitchen, I'm in the garde manger section, and doing vegetables and salads, and then sent me to housekeeping, and then banquets, and front office and bars, and did a full rotation of all areas. And then I got to be an assistant general manager of a small 20-bedroom hotel, still in England. No computer, by the way, in that property. So it's still possible to run everything was on a pencil. And that was quite an experience. And then they promoted me to a 60-bedroom property. And at that point, it was 1991, I left the UK. I wanted to come to the United States, and I landed in Boston. And I really wanted to work in luxury, and I had the opportunity to work at the Ritz-Carlton Boston, which was the old Grand Dam Hotel that was built in 1927. And it was sort of the signature hotel at the time in the Ritz-Carlton group. And I was lucky enough to start there, not as assistant general manager, But my first job there, and I always talk about this very fondly. I was an elevator operator, and so I stood in the lobby of the Ritz-Carlton with my bow tie and my orchid and my white gloves, and I would welcome guests in. They would take a seat on the bench. I'd have to close the brass gates, and you had to keep an eye on the floor numbers zipping by because you manually controlled the speed of the elevator, and you actually needed a license to drive this elevator because I could be really mean to you if you'd had a little bit too much lunch. So I did that for a little while. Went to PBX. I was answering calls, went to reservations, took reservations, and I got into human resources. Ended up becoming the recruiting manager for the hotel, and then became director of training for the hotel. And then in '95, I ended up going to Colorado. I really wanted to work in a ski town. Had got my job there as an assistant front office manager at what was then the Westin Resort Vail. It became the Vail Cascade, and I think it's changed names a few times now. I think it's a Hyatt, but it was about 270 or so rooms, ski in, ski out, right on the creek, and that was a wonderful 2 years. 35 feet of snow the last winter I was there. So we had a great time. And then I got an opportunity to go to California. I was in San Diego for the opening of the Four Seasons in Aviara, and started off there as an assistant front office manager. Got moved into reservations, became a reservations manager. Went to housekeeping. I was an assistant executive housekeeper. Did that for another 2 years, and then I stayed with the Four Seasons family, and they moved me to Atlanta. I became the front office manager in Atlanta in Midtown. Did that for another 4 years. They sent me down to Miami. I opened up Four Seasons in Miami. And then from there, really, I ended up coming to the Kiowa, to the sanctuary. And when I first came to Kiowa, it was about 20 years ago. I knew this was going to be a very special place. So I was here about 8 months before we opened, and really just had a phenomenal experience. And of course, if I moved again, my wife was going to kill me. And my kids were young, I think 5 and 3 at the time, and now they're both out of college. So, the journey for me has been very special, and everyone's journey is always very different. And I always say that to people that are looking at a hospitality career. The minute you think that you're in one spot and you've learned this particular job or that particular function, another door opens, or there's something else that might interest you, and you get to explore different facets of this business that is really never ending and is always going to teach you something. So I've been very blessed with it, and I've had a lot of fun. I think that's the name of the game, right? You got to
Yeah,
smile and make guests happy, and enjoy being sort of the consummate host.
exactly. You make a lot of good points there when you're talking about, obviously well traveled, well versed within the hospitality industry, and you noted about how important it is to see all those different areas, to be in there, and like you said, whether that's an elevator operator, that's being in the laundry on a housekeeping day-to-day basis, but seeing those things and some of the instances that could come up, how has that kind of prepared you to be a better leader and seeing all the day-to-day operations throughout all those facets of the company?
Well, from leadership for me, we do talk about leadership every year. We have a class here at Kiowa, and what I've learned is that leadership is no one single thing. It's a multitude of things that are applied at different times and different moments with different people and different situations. And some people say, "Oh, you're born with leadership." Some people say it's a gradual thing. I like to call it sort of a school of hard knocks. You go through life, and you make great decisions and great leadership decisions, and then there's times when you're like, oh, I'm never going to do that again, so I would like to say, I've certainly grown up and learned much more about myself over the years. But I think leadership should make you feel something. And obviously we're trying to make you feel good about why you're here and what you're doing, and with the team that you're with. Consequently, in my career, I've worked for leaders that have made you feel completely the opposite. Sometimes people don't quite get that piece of their responsibility, and so I think I like to use leadership in a lot of ways to help build other things that really are more important to me, and things like we're talking about trust and honesty and loyalty and respect. Those are the things ultimately a leader can do or not do, as the case may be. They can completely be the opposite to that. So I think that it's one of those things. It's an ever evolving piece, but I think the focus is, being very mindful and humble that you have that as your responsibility in your role, so that you can affect the team around you in a very positive way.
Very good. And I think that's kind of a perfect segue into to the next section as we talk about leadership, when we're talking about moving people forward and that natural progression. I'd like to hear some specific moments or accomplishments. And, we talk about moments of pain and frustration and challenges, but then also those areas of accomplishment and pride. So if you've got any specifics or times that you've been a part of those prides or accomplishments, and conversely the pain or frustration sides, and how you overcame those, or how you celebrated those.
Well, I think there are definitely moments in time that are embedded in your memory, positively and negatively. Certainly, I like to think of the opening of this hotel as one of those moments. I remember a day I parked a lot of cars. It was August. It was hot. It was we had a lot of people in and out of the hotel, and it was just a great moment to get to that point and what we were doing. I remember getting the AAA 5 Diamond Award in '07, and that was a huge milestone. And then a year later, we were lucky enough to get the Mobile 5-star award for the hotel and for the spa. And we were like the third hotel in the country to get the spa Mobile 5 stars, and that was again very special. And then I think of the PGA championships that have come to Kiowa, and how much preparation and planning and worry and things about what ifs and how we're going to do this, and rising to that challenge, and knowing that you're in the world's sort of spotlight for those 7 days that all those players are with us. And so all those moments are really just incredible times and moments for me. And I was particularly proud this year to learn in January that our Ocean Room restaurant was awarded 5 stars by Forbes. So we're one of only 38 hotels or 38 restaurants in the country with a 5-star award for their restaurant, and only 5 hotels in the country that have a 5-star hotel, 5-star spa, and a 5-star restaurant. So I think that's incredibly proud moment for me, and certainly for the team. So trying to maintain that and grow that experience so it's even better is one that's important. When I think of frustrating times or things that disappointed me, quite often, it's I'm very protective of my team and my staff. And I think when you look back at certainly the COVID years, that was a roller coaster time in every single hotelier's tenure. And then sometimes I was just disappointed with the way guests sometimes treated the team and treated the staff, and the sense of entitlement that a lot of our guests sometimes had to purvey was something that I got involved with to support the team with, and kind of set an expectation for a guest to say, listen, we want you here, we love you here, and please enjoy your time. But let's do it responsibly, and let's be respectful of each other. And so those are moments for me that, often, I'm often that protector of the guest experience, but more importantly, the employee experience, and they have to feel that trust from me.
I think you make a great point there. I mean, when you start talking about, sometimes those frustrations lead to the celebration, whether that's getting ready for the PGA Championship or getting ready for, accolades within Forbes or whomever. It's kind of building those things up to what's happening, and kind of gives you that celebration at the end of the road to say, okay, we made it. and there's bumps in the roads that you go, but you see as a leader, as you've witnessed, and then also as you project to your team, that those are things that are always going to come up.
Right.
And you guys have flown high above those frustrations to create such a great guest experience for everyone that comes there to the sanctuary.
Well, I think, we're in the business so much that sometimes you get onto a routine and a remote way of dealing with circumstances, situations, and then, all of a sudden, then you become a guest somewhere, and you see another operation trying to provide, the experience you're trying to provide. And it brings, a smile to your face when things happen that are so positive and unexpected and wonderful. And then you realize why you're in the business, because
Yeah.
again, it put a smile on your face. And, that's why I'm doing this, because of the feeling that, this property and this department or this restaurant has made me feel a certain way. And that's a really good thing to nurture.
It's great. Well, we'll move into our next segment as we go through, and it talks really about being a leader within the hospitality industry and how that is multi-dimensional. And there's four areas that we feel like you need to possess between leadership skills that range from strategic thinking to influence and to empathy. You need to practice excellent management from decision making, to financial acumen, but also a master of the technical aptitude and staying current with relevant things in the industry. You spoke to COVID and how those changes made were wide sweeping that were forced upon us, but then also at the same time, what stayed in the industry after that, and then the relationships. That's relationships with your guests, that's with the team, which is probably first and foremost, is how most of us think, and that projects out to that. But I'd like for you to kind of talk about some of those skill sets, as being a leader in the role that you're in, and where you've seen that they make so much more sense.
Um, as a leader, you set the pace, you set the tone, you set the example. Um, how you act, what you say, your tone of voice, everything about your day-to-day interactions is something that is vastly important. I've talked a little bit about how I use sort of leadership in different circumstances and roles to gain trust and respect and loyalty. And I think that's really an evolving piece and what I do. When I think of management, I think of systems. I think of processes and SOPs and documenting, what we say we're going to document in terms of how we're going to do things and what is our goal and our vision and how we're going to get there and what are the steps we want to take and what's the timeline we want to attach to those things. And in my time with Ritz-Carlton, for instance, in the early 90s, we were going for an award called the Malcolm Baldrige Award, which no hotel had ever pursued that award because it was considered to be too hard to get or too difficult for a hospitality organization to actually try to get. And we measured everything. We literally, from how long it took to park a car, to get luggage out, to check somebody in, to get luggage up to the room, to orientate the guest. How long did it take for the room service order to take that call and for it to get up to the room? And so we went through all of this analysis of processes and really got very granular in how we did things. And so the management of that ultimately was always about process improvement because you try to really achieve an efficiency with everything that you were doing. And so we really did focus on six things. So we talked about recruiting recruiting the right people, orientating people in the right way so that they had a very clear expectation of what was going to happen and how they were going to be expected to behave. We talked a lot about the certification process and the department heads that were involved with the certification process and how they were responsible for making sure that employee were up to speed. The recertification process, and that was, we do that every year here at the sanctuary where everyone on property, and I have about 570, 580 employees just in the sanctuary. And everyone goes through a recertification process. So if you've been here 1 year or whether you've been here 15 years, you're going to be recertified in your role. Because I think that that's important to be reminded of that. The other process we talk a lot about is the guest resolution process. When things go wrong, is everyone crystal clear on how we are going to handle solving that problem and documenting the problem and making sure that the problem isn't going to happen again to the same guests, so that if they had something in housekeeping, whether it was let's just say a cushion that's not quite right or it's got a stain on it, then we're going to make sure that that's never going to happen to them. And what we're going to measure that as something for future. Do we need to replace cushions, or do we need to replace running toilet flapper or something like that? And then communication was the last one. And there are so many different forms of communication in the hotel operations systems, of notice boards and emails and lineups and meetings, and how are we going to create that sort of sense of alignment. So we focus a lot on that aspect, so that everyone's very clear on what my expectations are and what the process is, and let's look at the process. Can we make it any better? When I look at technical items, that really for me boils right down to the standards. Do you know your standards? When Forbes comes to rate us, between the hotel and the spa and the ocean room, we're talking in the neighborhood of about 900 standards that they're looking at. And everyone better know what they are. How are you going to score if you don't know what the score sheet should be, right? So really getting granular with understanding what the standards are, and to deliver them, not necessarily just because of force. You want to deliver them because it creates an environment where the guest really benefits from the consistency in the service. And I think that's really why I enjoy the sort of the standard driven approach. And then lastly, the relationships. Goodness gracious, none of us could do the jobs that we do if we did not have the strong relationships that we have around us to make us successful. And I consider myself very lucky and privileged. And I have a director of rooms as a person that I hired as a bellman. I have a spa director as a person that I hired as a front desk agent. I have an executive chef that started off as a line cook. And so there's just so many success stories of people that started in one role and just continue to keep improving and sharpening their skills and growing. And above anything else is treating them like individuals, treating them like human beings, and making sure that relationship is strong, and we're having one-on-one time with people, and really just kind of sharing what's important for each other. So I think you wrap all of that in together, and it does sort of come full circle to you, and translating in loyalty and trust. And we might not all agree, and certainly we don't all agree sometimes, but at least we all put our feelings on the table, and we get into a resolution and we move on to the next thing. So but I think we all know each other well enough that we respect each other in that vein.
Yeah, and talking to those consistencies, like you said, having those certain procedures and policies that are in place that then allows, the hotel to operate in one way, but then you go back to the relationship side, and whether that's team members building a relationship with each other or with the guests that come year in and year out, and the membership, they can take those consistencies and kind of be themselves at some point to build the relationship side of it, and kind of have the procedures that are known, and go from there. So those are great points, and I think very, very helpful as people see as they navigate the industry. So there's one other item I kind of want to touch on, and it's speaking to kind of this shift in the hospitality industry, and I think we have talked about this many times within our meetings and things. And what does this look like, not just 12 months out, but what does it look like in the next 10 years? And it's our role and our obligation to share what we've learned and growing up through the system and through the industry for the leaders that are tomorrow. And, in doing these lessons in leadership, it's been very helpful to share with our teams for them to see this and hear from other managers throughout the Southeast that have had certain things that they've had to work on or go through and helping them focus on their title and what that looks like going forward. So I'd like for you to give us kind of your top five lessons in leadership to close us out here and walk through these a little bit for us.
Sure. Um, they may seem a little bit repetitive in terms of things that I've talked about, but I think the most important thing for me is building the right team. And Jim Collins wrote that great book, said, from good to great. And he talks about getting the right people on the bus. If you don't have the right people on the bus, then you'll never get to the destination you want to get to. So building the team and even if it means you have to wait till you get to that right person, don't select somebody that you're not 100% sure is going to work for you, and do the due diligence that you have. And I talk to students all the time at University of South Carolina and College of Charleston and Trident Tech, and I go and I teach a class, and I say, really, I'm looking for three things, when you're looking to come on board is, are you hungry enough for the job? You got to really want to be here. You got to really want to be in the hospitality business. If you think you're overqualified, if you think this is above you, and things that people are going to look at you like you're a servant instead of being in the service business, then you probably don't need to be in the service business, right? You need to have that sense of humility about what you're at, and kind of ties into the next thing of being hungry enough and humble enough to be here as well. So again, sometimes people say, "Oh, I'm overqualified, to be a housekeeper," or "I'm overqualified to park cars," or to check people in. Well, guess what? Everyone, if you're starting off in this business, you got to start somewhere and pick something that you're going to feel confident you can do really well, and let your performance, do the talking after that. And the last thing on the recruitment side is, I'm always looking, are you smart enough, right? Are you intelligent enough to do the job? I hate to say it,
Yeah.
but that's often, the three things I look for. Are you smart enough? Are you humble enough? And are you hungry enough for the job? And so it kind of builds into another thing that I used to teach when I was a director of training was really there was a study done. This was in the early 90s about really what made people successful in any walk of life, any business, any culture. If you thought of people in your life of what's the one thing that makes them as good as they are, and if you thought of that attribute in that person, what value or skill do they have? 85% of the time, it is something to do with attitude. Because if you define success, it was either defined on attitude, intelligence, or skill. And if you had to choose which attribute you're thinking of for the person you're thinking of, almost 85% of the time it was an attitude personality trait. And so I think that is often one of those things that gets overlooked, that you have to get all these skills, but at the end of the day, if you have the right approach, if you have the respect, and you show up on time, and you stay late when needed, and you're more anticipatory, and you have that team aspect, and you have the respect, then you're gonna do wonderful things that people are not doing out there. One thing I like to also talk about is developing loyalty. And that as a leader is something that, another book that I often refer to is Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And there's a concept in there that he talks about that is the emotional bank account. And you put deposits in people's accounts, not just with employees and peers and people that you interact with, but you put deposits in your friends' accounts and your family's accounts. And the deposits are things like being honest and being truthful and doing a good job and being respectful, and all of those things get to a positive thing. And obviously the negatives are all of the opposite. You know, if you're not very respectful, you're not very truthful with that person, you know, there is no investment in them. So, you know, I remember you know, my time in housekeeping, for instance, every single day I would make a bed for a housekeeper that I didn't need to make a bed for. I was doing them a favor, and uh, they knew it was me, and it just made their day another 15 minutes quicker. But I knew at some point later that week or later that month, someone was going to call off, someone couldn't get in. You know, all of a sudden we picked up 10 more rooms than we anticipated. And I was, you know, asking everybody, hey, listen, I need someone to clean these rooms. Can you stay a little later? Can you pick up, you know, this or that? And so, you know, the emotional bank account of being respectful and being consistent and doing things for people, I think will help you in just make, you know, your life a little easier. So that's always been an important thing. Um, Everything is a process, is something I've just referred to with the Ritz-Carlton thing. And so everything we do is documented. If it is not documented, I will tell you that it doesn't happen, it doesn't exist. And I remember going to a hotel once, and there was no training manual, there was no checklist, there was no systems, there was literally everything that happened at this front office, for instance, was in the minds of the people that existed there, you know, that they just did it by memory. And I was blown away that the things were happening the way they were happening. So, you know, starting from scratch in terms of developing, you know, all of the documents that you need to put together for the training and certification, and making sure things were consistently done is really a basic thing. And then the last thing I will talk about, and this is often one that is overlooked, is I would like to say, talk about your perception. You know, everyone perceives others in different ways and different lights. And, you know, when I was, I suppose, a young assistant manager, you know, I thought, well, you know, the people that are above me are the only people that are going to affect my career. So I'm going to make sure that you know, that I do everything and be, you know, make sure that my department head is really happy with me, and that my division head is really happy with me, and that, you know, my assistant GM or my GM or my HR director, and I want to make sure that I manage the relationships with just those individuals. And the hotel company I worked for at the time, they did a perception study, and I suppose the exec team would sit in a room and they would talk about all the managers in the hotel, and everyone on the exec team would go ahead and say a few words about what their perception was of each individual manager. And I had a friend on the exec team that kind of shared with me what my perception was. I don't think he was supposed to, but he did anyway, right? And so he said, "Is half the room love you to death, and the other half room don't care for you?" And I was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it! You know, what do you mean they don't care for me?" And I came to the sort of realization that everybody, whether it's an exec team member, whether it's a department head, whether it's a housekeeper or a server or a beach person, whoever it is you're interacting with, they all have influence over your career. So be nice, be helpful, be respectful, shake their hands, you know, try and remember something about them, have a smile for them, you know, spend time, look at them in the eye. Don't just say, hey, how you doing? And just keep on walking down the hallway. You know, so all of those little things, I think, at the end of the day, help, you know, manage your perception as a person, as a leader, as an individual in this business that is only going to help sort of propel you and jobs that obviously you're going to go for, and people are going to be like, yeah, I want to be like that person, or I really like that aspect of what he does. So those are kind of some of the things that I've learned along the way that I often talk about. You know, of course, it's easy to talk about and much more difficult to implement, but you know, I try really hard to do that.
Well, no, those are all very insightful and inspiring. You know, the perception piece of it, I think, is something that everyone, you know, battles, and it can always be whether that's working up through the ranks or being in a role with oversight of a lot of the team, because it is, you know, the idea that perception is reality, and that can kind of seep into some of those things on a daily basis. So
Sure.
those were great to hear from. So. Well, perfect. Well, thank you so much today, Bill. It was, like I said, very insightful, and your career and what you've done, and to hear about that and talk about that and a little bit more about your leadership attributes and knowledge have been very helpful. So we appreciate the time today, and we look forward to continuing this series in the coming months with some other leaders. So thanks again, Bill, and happy holidays.
You too, Brent. Thank you very much for the time.
Perfect. Thank you.
Have a good Christmas. Thank you.
Thanks.